Hi there. So before I talk about the attempt to arrest a police officer, I don't want to miss an opportunity to speak about what I now see as the things that really count, and that is speak about the prevention of unnecessary harm to animals that are being really badly harmed at the moment, 56 billion of them a year through the factory farming system, and lots of people are being harmed. In very serious ways all around the world. They're being exploited and harmed for our benefit. And so that harm that's being done and preventing it is much, much more important, in my opinion, than the harm that's being done by the Public Order Act. So what's happened to me and all the other people that have been harmed by the Public Order Act in some way, and I have been harmed by it because I've been taken to court a few times for it, and that's harmful. It's very stressful and harmful. And I was very lucky that in the end, I have never been convicted, although I was convicted and then I got it overturned. But I've still been harmed by it. But there are lots of people who've been harmed much worse by it. And the same thing applies to the drugs laws, what the drug laws do, as does the Public Order Act. What it does is it turns the enforcers into the people that are doing the harm. They're initiating harm against peaceful people who haven't actually done anything. And that's my objection, and that's what I'm going to object to in this film. But before I do, I want to just share with you that since I've become plant-based and since I've become aware of the arguments of antinatalism, I now see that those subjects are far more important, and that the harm that's done to us by the governments and the police is still far, far, far less than the harm that most of us are still involved and complicit with when it comes to animals. Terrible, terrible harm that is happening right now in factory farms all around where I am and where you probably are. Terrible harm is being done to these animals, far worse than anything that most police forces are doing, even in China. And then there's the harm as well, which is the really, this is the tricky one, the harm of coming into existence in the first place, that our parents have inflicted on us and on the world. And again, I don't think that either of those ideas is going to be very popular amongst you lot, because I'm sure there are parents amongst you lot, and I'm sure there are children amongst you lot, so that's another reason not to be popular, but also because many of you are probably still addicted to eating animal flesh and animal products. I don't even like to call them that, because I don't think they're meant to be products. I don't know. So when it comes to comparing what we are doing and what you guys are doing compared to what this young police officer does in this film, it's pathetic. It's really not that bad what he's doing. And I deserve it as well, not just, even though I'm no longer participating in the abuse of animals in this way, because I don't eat animals or their products. I am participating in the terrible abuse of humans just by being part of society, and the abuse that is meted out towards those humans is 100 times worse than the abuse from a police officer who doesn't really know what the Public Order Act is and whatever, and he's curbing our so-called freedom of speech. So in a way, you're probably best just to switch off now, because what you're about to see is just probably a bit of a distraction. And I feel I've looked back at a lot of the videos, and I'm thinking of getting rid of some of them, or at least adding to them the warning that people watching them are really wasting their time compared to what they could be focusing on, which is to try and do something about this terrible stain on our society of factory farming, and also to help spread skepticism about creating more and more and more life on this planet. But I'm going to carry on anyway, because I know you guys like this sort of stuff, and I'm going to have a little look at my performance and how it could be improved if any of you want to play a similar game.
Pointed out two members of the public and said to them that you shouldn't be having kids and it's upset them. So what I'm going to advise you is you stop saying stuff like that. You're allowed to stay here, right, say whatever you want. Please don't say anything directly towards people that could be causing alarm, harassment or distress to them, okay? because that's a breach of the peace or public order offences, and we may have to look at arresting you.
Now, at this stage, I should have meditated for 30 seconds. Meditation, the next thing to do is to start asking them questions. So he has just threatened to arrest me under the Public Order Act or breach of the peace. Neither of them he knows the words of. And as soon as you discover that they don't know the words of the act and they've threatened to arrest you, then they are misbehaving. They don't necessarily realise this, but they are misbehaving because they don't really know what they're talking about.
Okay, so please, you can stay here, you can protest.
So now, are you threatening me with arrest? Because I find this very interesting. Are you threatening me with arrest?
If you carry on with the
if
you carry on with the actions that you carry on with, yeah.
All right.
Because
okay. So
it's not necessarily what you said; it's the impact that it had on people. Okay, it caused harassment, alarm, and distress.
Okay.
So two different people, and we've had 2 complaints about it now. Okay.
Right. Okay. So. I'm at the moment. I'm going to detain you. At the moment, I'm going to ask these people. I'm going to for section 5 public order.
Why?
Because you have just said threatening words to me that are likely to lead to her long lasting distress.
Said you're going to be arrested if you continue with
so that's a public order offence.
It's not because you were ready to
Well, okay. So what words did I say that you can fit into the public order? Right. Okay. Firstly,
you shouldn't be having children, which upset 2 people. Firstly, with children.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Now, firstly, we don't know what I've said and what I haven't said, right? You've had allegations.
And
okay,
I said
fine.
if you carry on with those words.
Yes. Okay, so you're saying to me, if I'm to say to someone, that which I didn't, by the way, but if I was to say to someone that I don't think they should reproduce.
Well, if someone has taken offence.
If someone's taken direct offence. Okay, I think you've misunderstood the Public Order Act. What are the words?
I can only go by what people have told
What are the words of the Public Order Act?
Sorry?
What are the words of the Public Order Act?
The Section 5 Public Order Act.
What's the words? Why don't we look it up? Yeah.
Right.
No. What are the words? No. That's 3 of the words. What's the actual act say? What happened there is that I asked them what the words of the act was, and eventually they say, "Well, why don't you tell me?" And at that stage, that is when you make the arrest, because it's not up to me to tell them the words of the act, because I don't believe in the act anyway. I think it's an absolute disgrace and it's completely illegitimate. And I don't, I think the act is ridiculous. And it's not for me to tell them what the act is. If they don't know what the act is, at that stage, you then go and make the arrest. What do you have to do in order to transgress the public? Ladies and gentlemen, come a little bit closer. It's very interesting. These guys are threatening to arrest me because they are alleging someone told them that I had said to someone who had a child that they shouldn't be reproducing. And they're suggesting that they're going to arrest me under the Public Order Act, right?
If you continue with those words, yes.
Now I am now placing this man under citizen's arrest because I believe that he is actually transgressing the Public Order Act because he has threatened me. I haven't threatened anybody, but he has threatened to kidnap me. You have threatened to kidnap me. I haven't threatened anyone.
I haven't. I've threatened to arrest you.
Yeah, that's kidnapping.
No.
Oh, yes, it is.
I've threatened to arrest you lawfully.
Yeah, but not lawfully. It's not lawfully. I haven't done anything wrong. If I was to say to someone, I don't think you should reproduce, and I'm asking you guys, this is really important. What are the words of the Public Order Act? May I suggest that you get your phones out and check up the whole wording of the Act, because if you don't know the wording of the Act, you cannot enforce it. Would you agree with that?
Who says words that are likely to cause harassment, alarm, or
That's not the wording of the Public Order Act. Seriously, why don't you check it out on your phone?
Would you like to tell me, sir?
Yes, will someone Google it so we don't get it? Right? Section 5...
Word signs of visual representation
are
likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress.
No, that's not the words of the Act. You've missed out on absolute crucial words of the Act. What do you want me to search? Section 5 of the Public Order Act. And the same thing applies if someone says breach of the peace. Well, what is a breach of the peace? Because a lot of policemen don't realise that a breach of the peace is not just someone being a bit annoying. It's something that would likely to lead to serious violence. And they don't know that, a lot of them. The minute you ask them that question, and if they come back and they would have come back and said to me, well, why don't you tell me? I said, no, it's not my business to tell you. Why don't you tell me? You are enforcing the Act. Do you know the words? You have to keep on saying, do you know the actual wording of the Act? And if they say, no, then you can carry on asking, well, do you need to know the wording of the Act in order to enforce it? And when they say no, if they say no, then you say to them, well, at the moment, I'm now placing you under citizen's arrest. Now, one of the things I learned from the comments, which I find very amusing, and I read most of them, is that you can apparently, I haven't checked this up, but it doesn't really matter, that the commentator says you can only arrest a police officer for an indictable offence that you can be put in prison for. I'm not talking here about physically detaining them, but I've been told that it has to be for an indictable offence. So I'm assuming that's true, which led me to remember the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, which says a police constable commits an offence if he or she A. exercises the powers and privileges of a constable improperly, and B. knows or ought to know that the exercise is improper. 2. A police constable guilty of an offence under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years or a fine or both. I would suggest that that's exactly what they're doing. They're behaving improperly by threatening arrest for a law that they don't know the wording of. And then I would continue, and if they came back to me and they said something like he says in the film,
I'm going to detain you at the moment. I'm going to ask these people. I'm going to for section 5 public order.
Why?
Because you have just said threatening words to me that are likely to lead to her long lasting distress.
Said you
right?
want to be arrested
yes,
if
exactly.
you continue with
so that's a public order offence.
No, it's not.
And then if he sort of said, but you started first, I'd say you can just take that to a magistrate's court, but I'm going to have to get your details. Please give me your name, your date of birth, and your home address. And I would have just gone straight in like that. I might have also said something like, you have the right to remain silent, but if you do so, it could be used against you. Anything you say could be used against you in the court of social media, maybe, or something like that, as well as in court. And then I would wait to see what he said. I wouldn't touch him. This is just an idea to detain him verbally. And then I may call 999 or speak to one of his colleagues and attempt that they arrest him. And the point of this is to show that actually when another human being comes up to a fellow human and threatens to handcuff them, put them in the back of a van, take them, lock them up in a cell, take their fingerprints, put them in front of some kind of authority of people who all think the same way, and then steal money from them. If somebody was to do that as a result of another person saying, I don't think you should have children, then that would be regarded as a very crazy and dangerous and inappropriate response to a remark. And by the way, the people in the comments section who said, if you'd have done that when I was with me and my girlfriend, I'd come and smash your head in. Again, that is also an inappropriate response to somebody's comment. And if somebody makes a comment to you, you can just walk off and laugh, and it's their problem. That's what I do when people make comments to me. I don't call the police. But his behaviour by threatening to arrest me is crazy if you just take the uniform off. And that's the way of checking out whether something is appropriate behaviour or not. If you just take the uniform away and we were to do it to each other, that would be seen as inappropriate. And that's what I was trying to get through to him. However, as I said at the beginning of this, it doesn't compare in the inappropriateness of what we're doing to animals. Now, I've had an idea as a result of this to set up a petition to repeal the Public Order Act. I think that might be quite fun. Of course, it's not going to be repealed because there's lots of people that make lots of money out of it, and it's part of their addiction to control and power, and they have a huge amount of power over us with that ridiculous act. But I also had an idea to create a petition to include all animals in the Animal Welfare Act, which I will go into in a separate video, because at the moment it's okay to be completely unnecessarily cruel and torture chickens, cows, ducks, because we eat them. So I think we should change that law. That's a very important law to be changed to protect those lot. Well, there we done. So, thank you for watching and be well.